Welcome, everybody, to the 100-Year Lifestyle, where we are transforming health and longevity worldwide so that you and your loved ones can live, truly live at 100% for 100 years and beyond. And special guest, good friend, shared platform comrade who we have on the road, crossing paths, sharing stages, doing amazing work. Dr. Jack Wolfson, you know him as the Paleo Cardiologist, 100-year heart guy. Jack, welcome back, my man.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eric. It's a pleasure to be on, and I just love all the work that you're doing over at 100yearlifestyle.com and just, getting the message out there of health and wellness. There's so much against us right now. There's so much, big media, big publicity, of course, big pharma that are trying to stand in our way, but the truth is going to win. And we know that their system is a failure. 78 years for an American is not enough. We want the 100-year heart. We want the 100-year lifestyle. We want to live till 100, thrive, not survive.
Yeah, no question about it. And, listen, a lot of people are talking about this war against humanity that, here we are, life expectancy. You brought up the life expectancy. Life expectancy actually has dropped to 76 point something in the United States of America. It's the lowest level and the biggest drop since World War II. And people ask me, well, Dr. Plasker, what happened in World War II? And I say, you know what happened in World War II. Come on. And it's a scary thing to know what's going on here. And, here you are the Paleo Cardiologist. You come from a holistic background, not necessarily, actually, I want you to tell your story, but you guys have been super duper busy post jab, post everything because of what's gone on in the world. What are you seeing?
Well, what I'm seeing is really just, again, a failure of the medical model. And it is again and again and again, where they've got no preventive strategies to keep people healthy and well. The conversation over the last 3 years and the pandemic has never been about health and wellness. It's never been about eat this food and avoid these foods. It's never been about getting better sleep or more sunshine. It's never been about physical activity and avoiding environmental toxins. It's never been about certainly the chiropractic adjustment. And it's never been about holistic dentistry. It's never been about being happy and finding these, what we would say is think well. And all, and actually what is beneficial to people is to be socially congregated and have a sense of community, but this social isolation, how devastating that is. So they really came at this 100% wrong in every different level. And then you mentioned they were just, okay, everybody hunker down, stay in your little cave until we come out with a vaccine, which has no evidence whatsoever of efficacy, certainly from a mortality standpoint. And those are from 2 studies done in New England Journal of Medicine back in September of 2021, the lack of efficacy really of those, of 2020. And the reality is, again, there's just a much better way. And that's why, you and I exist, to get the truth out there to help these millions of people who just aren't getting the right message.
Yeah, so here I am. I'm a chiropractor, holistic, health conscious, understanding the body's ability to heal itself, birthright time, not borrowed time. You're supposed to thrive through every phase of life. And here you are, you're a cardiologist, the Paleo Cardiologist, and we're buds. We get along, we think alike, and people don't understand that there is this common thread and truth as it relates to health and well-being and wellness and functioning at your highest level for a lifetime, that an open mind that has not been polluted by misinformation and pharma, and their brain has not been bought. They are thinking clearly. It doesn't matter what our background is. We are a testament that we could be on the same side, the side of humanity and people healing and functioning at a high level. So I want you to talk about from a cardiological perspective, if you don't mind, because it's important, especially since 2021 and people started getting jab after jab after jab after jab. There's all this talk about heart issues that are happening. We see it in our practice. It's heartbreaking to me. It's not a heart attack to me, but it certainly is heartbreaking to me. And tell me from that perspective, what are you seeing in your practice and the practices that you work with, and what can people do to help themselves if they're still here?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of devastation from people who got the COVID shots initially and booster shots. We've seen all kind of cases of myocarditis. We've seen heart attacks. We've seen strokes. A lot of heart rhythm problems too, Dr. Eric. As far as atrial fibrillation, PACs, PVCs, people with palpitations. We've seen that. We've seen cases of Bell's palsy. Saw one case of just for no reason, the guy's testosterone dropped in half, and that was certainly an epiphany moment, for him. And certainly from a lot of our colleagues, a lot of our natural and holistic colleagues too, they talk about people who've been doing well from a cancer standpoint, and truly in remission, and then all of a sudden their cancer came back and flared once they received the COVID shots. So I think ultimately we need to be allowed to question everything. We should have the freedom to question. We should have these conversations about these different topics, and people are waking up to the truth. They see the problems with the COVID jabs as they are. They see the lack of benefit, and they see it again where you get these these mutants and these variants and all this kind of fear factor that they're trying to sell us. And people are now, they're seeing through it. They're seeing, hey, wait a second, not only was whatever COVID was, it wasn't that bad for the vast majority of people. And number two, they're seeing that the jab didn't work. And number three, they're seeing the side effects from the jab. So they're seeing through all this pharmaceutical company propaganda. And I think that's where the truth is coming in, and hopefully we'll be allowed to continue to question everything. And again, these people are waking up now, whereas in the beginning they were so pro pharma, and now they're waking up to see the truth in reality. And I think what you said to this, the word cardiological, it's just logical. It's just our methodologies are common sense, right? and I learned this from the doctors at Chiropractic, right? Take away, give the body what it needs, take away what it doesn't, and take away that interference. And shots and jabs and chemicals and poisons and pharma are interfering with the normal, body system, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that way. And it's really this whole thing being sold as a humanitarian effort when we are realizing that it was not a humanitarian effort at all. And what the real humanitarian effort is people like you and I and the people that we hang out with and all the people that are talking about it, because we have to talk about it. The people that are talking about it, I believe, and the people that are listening to this and sharing your message, these are the real humanitarians. And a lot of what we want to do and what we've been doing is empowering people, Dr. Jack, to be able to do that and to give them solutions, holistic solutions that are real, relevant, because we've seen everything that you've talked about. We've seen tinnitus, we've seen neurological tremors, we've seen Bell's palsy and cranial nerve issues. We've seen all kinds of things. We've seen people lose function in an arm. We've seen people lose function in a leg, and it just random different things because of the way the spike protein makes its way through the body and can really, we're supposed to stay in one spot, but it's going everywhere in the body as we're learning. And so what are the solutions for people? What can people do if they have noticed side effects, if they do have myocarditis, if they do have heart inflammation, if they do have these issues, whether they're kids, because we're seeing it in kids, terribly, unfortunately, we're seeing it in adults and seniors and everybody in between. What can they do?
Yeah, I mean, really, it just kind of goes down to those concepts of eat the right foods, avoid the wrong foods, live the right lifestyle, meaning they're getting the sleep and the sunshine and the physical activity and movement, and they're avoiding all the environmental chemicals and toxins that they can, right? Mold, mycotoxins, BPA, phthalates, plastics, PVCs, all the different pesticides that they're loaded up with, all the different EMF, right? The body is an electromagnetic organism, and man-made electromagnetic fields are damaging to us. We get under chiropractic care, we take care of our teeth with a holistic dentist, we think the right thoughts. And then I think ultimately too, Dr. Eric, that we can do some of the most advanced testing in the world. And then if we need to, evidence-based supplements, other biohacking strategies. That's the only way that we're going to survive this onslaught. One of my best friends, he's a well-known cancer doctor, and he came down with Bell's palsy, 6'4", good-looking guy, speaks all around the world on behalf of Big Pharma, can't move the left side of his face. Wow. 3 weeks after a COVID shot. And even him, it's kind of like, well, how does he not get the memo? Well, he gets the memo, but he's a medical doctor, predicated on the use of pharmaceuticals. So it's been said, famous quote from the book called The Jungle by Upton Sinclair in the early 1900s out of Chicago. It's hard to get a man to think it's hard to get a man to understand the truth when his job depends on him not understanding the truth. So when we try, again, the medical doctors, they're just so brainwashed into one particular way. It's all about pharma. It's often been said, follow the money on everything, follow the money on COVID, follow the money in every major war, follow the money anywhere. For the last 500 years, it's been about the money. It's been about the money, thousands of years. Every war is about money and power. And this latest fiasco is no different.
So how did you escape all of that, man? With your training, your background and all of that, how did you escape all of that brainwashing? What was the catalyst for you to think differently? Because I don't know if it came natural to you or if it didn't come natural to you. What did it for you?
No, it definitely didn't.
And don't tell me it was a woman. Come on.
Yeah, no, it definitely was not natural, and it didn't come naturally to me, and it was a woman. So, you've heard me tell this story before, but for entertainment of the audience, I'll tell it again. Yeah, so I was playing tennis with a buddy of mine, hitting the ball back and forth. He's like, "Jack, you dating anyone?" I'm like, not really." He says, "I got to introduce you to this girl. She's 29 years old, single, chiropractor, yada yada." I'm like, I'm all good. And then I was at an arts and crafts festival about a week later, just serendipitously, and ran into this guy. And he's like, "Hey, Dr. Heather's here. Go up and say hello." So I go up to her. We started talking, and what do you do? I'm like, I'm a doctor, and she's like, "Oh, I'm a doctor too. What kind of doctor are you?" And so having this great conversation, and then quite, frankly, she's just like, "Your profession is just a bunch of, BS. Your pharmaceuticals, your procedures, your poisons, they're all worthless. You got to learn you got to." You got to become a DC. I'm like, wait a second. I just finished up 10 years of medical training, and now I'm a cardiologist in the biggest and most lucrative group in the state of Arizona. And you want me to become a doctor of chiropractic, DC? And she said, no, not DC doctor of chiropractic. You need to become a DC doctor of cause. You have to find out why people have sickness, and you have to teach them and train them and educate them and pull them out of the medical matrix. And what she had to say, Dr. Eric, made total sense. Number one, she's absolutely smoking hot. Number two, I saw sickness in my father. My father was sick and dying of a rare Parkinson's-like illness, and he would die at the age of 63. The Mayo Clinic had no reason and had no treatment, and they all said no reasons why he was sick and dying. So Mayo Clinic has no reason. Here's the 29-year-old chiropractor. She tells me all the reasons why my father is sick and dying, and she says, if you don't want to suffer the same fate, you will change. And I did.
Wow. Well, kudos to you, man. I wish we can get so many more to change. And that's a big part of our mission, and your mission is to get people to trust their own bodies, to trust themselves, to think differently about it. And, that's why I love sharing this path with you. You talked about doing all the right things. We wrote an ebook, and, people ask me, one of the most common questions people ask me, Dr. Plasker, how did you know? I mean, you've been right away in 2020 when they came out with this, this pandemic, you just did not buy into it for 1 second. And we came out in February of 2020 with an ebook called Becoming a Least Vulnerable Person. And we're giving it away for free. Everybody was talking about protecting the most vulnerable people. So we wrote a book, did a video on becoming the least vulnerable people. We put it out. People all over the world have downloaded it. Feel free to share it with your audience. Just have them go to 100yearlifestyle.com. They can download it. And it's everything that you're saying. It's just doing all the right things to, community equals immunity, hugs kill bugs, all of those things that, were totally anti-lockdown kind of things. And so, we're seeing the younger generation. Are you seeing kids that are being affected by COVID jabs now or having heart issues? Tell me about that, because I know from raising your family, did you raise your kids with vaccines and standard vaccines? Are they naturally immunized and not artificially vaccinated? And if so, how healthy are they? That's how we raised our kids. I'm curious about your kids. And then what are you seeing in kids maybe that have gotten jabbed?
Yeah, it's I have seen my share of teenagers who were affected by the jab. I have not seen too many ages 10 or younger, which I don't know, for whatever reason. I mean, obviously they're out there, but according to the literature, it really was a lot of the teenage boys who got it that were overtly affected. According to the medical literature, the highest incidence, I believe it was ages like 15 to age 29 amongst the males. And we certainly saw our fair share of those. And even those people, even if they didn't see us personally, just a lot of social media contact. Hey, what do you recommend for this? What could you do about, that type of process? For us personally, yeah, my wife was not vaccinated. Her 3 siblings were not vaccinated. And of course, our 4 children are not. And we are, surrounded by people in our community who didn't vaccinate their children either. And miraculously, everybody's great. Because like you said, you build up that body, you make yourself the least vulnerable. I love that, that terminology of what you guys are doing there, and encourage everyone to pick up the document that you guys put together, because that's so helpful. And my kids, listen, obviously we live in a toxic, polluted world, and as well as they eat and as healthy as we try and live, there are poisons everywhere. You take a breath in, you're breathing in glyphosate. Polar bears have hundreds of chemicals in their body, and they're up in at the North Pole. So there's sickness all around. We can only do what we can, but and the best that we can. And I believe that obviously that is the only survival strategy. If we will never be able to rely on big pharma, it's never going to work. It's never the answer. Like you said, trust the innate, trust your body to do the job. It's been around for a long, long, long time. It'll survive as long as we give the body what it needs, take away what it doesn't. That's the only strategy. And, like I said, our kids, they all had chicken pox. They all had some of the childhood, quote unquote, illnesses. And it's a rite of passage. And when you're a healthy child, you're bulletproof. There's nothing that you vaccinate for that I'm afraid of. Certainly, polio was all DDT poisoning. Before that, it was lead arsenate. Before that, it was arsenic poisoning. Measles, mumps, rubella. These are benign childhood illnesses that are rite of passage. And unfortunately, again, just big the propaganda. You and I both, when we were kids, chicken pox. It was a joke. 1969, the measles episode on the Brady Bunch. It was a joke, and then all of a sudden, it became this devastating crisis of what it was. And here we are today. But again, I think people are waking up to the truth about health and wellness. And the more you and I keep shouting from the rooftops, yeah, it's and it's such an honor again to be on with you. I love the stuff that you're doing, and just your massive community, 100-year heart, 100-year lifestyle. Excuse me, my community, my brand is 100-year heart, yours is 100-year lifestyle. I got so much of that out of you when I'm thinking, yeah, 100-year lifestyle. I'm going to offer people the 100-year heart, which is when you follow the 100-year lifestyle, then you achieve the 100-year heart. And I think most people would want that. Eric, I saw a person, a few weeks ago, new consultation. He's 53 years old. He's got ischemic cardiomyopathy. He's had a couple heart attacks. He's had a few stents. He's got an implanted cardiac defibrillator. He's done 7 pharmaceuticals for his heart. His life expectancy is over under, it's 4 years. 4 years. That's the medical literature. That's, what he has. And who would want that? Who'd want 4 years? Nobody would want 4 years. We offer a 100-year heart. I believe that person can have that if he follows our plan. If he follows the medical plan, he's got 4 years. So that person can make a decision where they want to go with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about some of the medical literature and things like that. There's a lot of legitimate concern that the biased science and the bought science and the manipulated science and the really the propaganda, not so much science. What resources do you go to for trust for scientific information? Because a lot of the things that are published in these major journals were really paid for by the drug companies who were trying to sell a product.
Yeah, the fact that's obviously well known. When you look at every other page in mainstream medical journal, whether it's New England Journal of Medicine, the Journal of the American Medical Association, it's advertisement after advertisement. You can turn on any television and see advertisement after advertisement for pharmaceuticals. And, where does someone go for the truth? Well, I think number one, it just has to make common sense. It just has to make common sense that if we sleep better, our immune system is going to function better. If we get outside and we're in nature and we have, sunshine exposure, light exposure, that's going to help improve our vitamin D levels. People with the highest levels of vitamin D, lowest risk of everything. So when we give our body what it needs, take away what it doesn't, we know that that's the strategy. Regarding the the literature, yeah, it's always going to have that big pharma sponsorship to it. But to that end, surprisingly, data gets published. You can find it all on PubMed.gov. PubMed.gov, where I spend a lot of my time in the medical literature, and you can see how these natural strategies. One paper I read from a couple years ago, serum glutathione is the most predictive marker against glutathione, or endogenous glutathione deficiency, as the most significant risk factor for COVID-19. So glutathione, again, we look at what that is. How do we boost levels of glutathione? How do we, that, and if that's our number one strategy, people with the highest levels of omega-3 from eating seafood, lowest risk of COVID morbidity and mortality, people with the highest levels of vitamin D, same thing. That's the strategy. Those are common sense strategies, and it's there available in the medical literature, but the medical doctors, they're just not reading it. They buy the mainstream propaganda.
Well, they can't make a living at it. They can't make a living at it. So that's, I think, and that's a shame to say, but it's really true. You said follow the money, and that is what's happening is, they just can't make a living on having people get healthy. And so, I think what you're doing is so important. And, I'll tell you what a topic that we have to cover today, because it's personal, people that I know and love. Let's talk about this high cholesterol issue, this statin drug issue, which, before we started this conversation, I was telling you about how I was told when I was a kid, basically, that heart disease ran in my family, cancer ran in my family, thyroid disease ran in my family, and I was going to have all these diseases because they ran in my family. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to think differently about all of those things. They don't run it in my family. Stress ran in my family. Bad eating ran in my family. All those other things ran in my family. Great parents, love my parents, but it's just, they just live differently. And so here I am, 60-year-old man, zero medication. I should be taking statin drugs according to all those other people. I haven't ever taken one, haven't even looked at a bottle, touched a bottle, won't go near it. But I do have people that I love and people that we see in our practice, Dr. Jack, that they are on statins. And, my father, from long-term statin use, he had a heart attack at 49, started taking statins at 68. He ended up going in a home because he had dementia. He died 10 years later, 10 years in a home with a healthy heart and no brain because of statin drug use, long-term statin drug use. And people get on them, or they hear this whole cholesterol story and its relationship to heart disease, which you and I know from the research is not accurate at all, but they're afraid. What do they need to know about statins and long-term statin use, and what do they need to know about cholesterol?
Yeah, those are great questions, and so sorry to hear about your father. And there's so many people who suffered, as well at the hands of statin drugs. And I believe that statin drugs were part of what led to the demise of my father and death of him at the age of 63. The way that statins work, but let's address a couple things here. Number one, people do not have a genetic problem. They've got, like you said, a lifestyle problem, and our genetics, I believe, we are built perfectly until man-made poisons wreck us. Poisons in the food, poisons in the air, in the water, in the soil, the whole thing. It's all just man-made disease. I'll blame it on the men too, because I'm not going to blame it on the women. It's the men who did this to this planet, not the women. The women would likely never have done this. It was all man-made. So let's also talk about the importance of cholesterol, how cholesterol is vital for every bodily function. Every cell contains cholesterol. The cell membrane is loaded with cholesterol. Our hormones come from cholesterol. Our vitamin D comes from cholesterol. Our digestion is from cholesterol. So cholesterol is just this critically important nutrient.
Right. And let me say, with what you're saying there, and I think the perception that people don't understand what you just said is that the body's invaded by cholesterol, when the reality of it is the body produces cholesterol, and how necessary, like you just said, how necessary it is for brain function, for cellular function, for everything, basically.
For everything. And we kind of hear about this, the bad cholesterol called LDL and the good cholesterol called HDL, and there's so much untruth about that as well. LDL has a purpose, HDL has a purpose, and if those levels are deemed abnormal, well then we need to figure out why, and the answer is not because of a statin deficiency. So let's all embrace the fact that cholesterol is good, LDL is good, HDL is good. Again, our body makes it. All mammals make the same thing for that same reason. Our body's not trying to kill ourselves. It's these are things that are very important. And when we inhibit the production of LDL, with statin drugs, we are just really playing with nature, and we're destroying nature. What's happening in our body? It inhibits the enzyme called HMG-CoA reductase. And in doing so, you make less cholesterol, but now you also make less dolichol and CoQ10 and Hem-A. Now, what are those things? Well, CoQ10 is involved in energy production in the mitochondria. Same thing with Hem-A. These are all part of what's called cytochrome C oxidase, the fourth part of the electron transport chain, where we make cellular energy and other things inside the cell. And then dolichol is actually a product of what's called neuromelanin, where the main location of that, and that has very important features, is inside of the midbrain called the substantia nigra. So if you don't make, if you take a statin drug and you're not making this product called, this chemical compound called dolichol, it's not going to be in your substantia nigra, and you're going to have a deficient substantia nigra, and therefore you would develop Parkinson's and other movement disorders, which again is what killed my father, and he took statin drugs. So ultimately, if you're taking these pharmaceuticals, it's just interfering in with this and many other things, and we're going to suffer the consequences. So much of heart disease is from lack of cellular energy, and when you inhibit cellular energy production because of statin drugs, you're in trouble. Now but that's will lead to side effects, like you said, brain disorders, muscle disorders, movement disorders, all different kind of things that statin drugs can lead to. But also, let's talk about the lack of benefit of statin drugs. So statin drugs, really the benefit, although it does lower lipids down in the vast majority of cases, that's not debatable. We don't really get any rewards for low lipids. We want to know, does the product lower my risk of having a heart attack, stroke, or dying? And actually, in some studies regarding overall risk of death, it doesn't lower mortality. It actually increases mortality. Sparkle trial was one of those. The original AFCAPS, TEXCAPS showed increased mortality. AllHat LLC was a trial done on people aged 65 and older, and those people on statin drugs versus placebo had an 18% higher risk of dying. If you were 75 and older, 34% higher risk of dying. Another study called Fourier that looked at this new pharmaceutical called Repatha, that showed increased mortality in the people who got that particular drug. Torcetrapib increased HDL, lowered LDL, more people died. So there are multiple studies. You can take any one of those, go look at them at PubMed. You'll see that more people died. And it's catastrophic. And even again, Eric, if we do say, okay, well, there is a heart attack reduction, our goal is not to reduce the chance of heart attack from 4% to 3.5%. The goal is to reduce it to 0%. They don't offer it, you and I do.
Wow. Well, really, really important messages that you're giving out. And, I see, I went to a bat mitzvah a couple of years ago, and I noticed all the elderly people, so many of them had, I call it the statin glaze, where their eyes were just staring into space. They couldn't really grasp hold of looking at something or someone with any sense of focus. And it was really kind of heartbreaking, because it reminded me, when I look at pictures of my dad, he was so sick even before he was sick. You could see it in his eyes. And so listen, this is such an important message. We could go on and on and on forever. So Dr. Jack, give us an optimistic 100-year heart, 100-year lifestyle closing thought and message for all of our people, and then tell us how we can find you.
Heart health is yours. Heart health is yours. It's achievable. It's not going to be with pharmaceuticals. It's not going to be with CT scans. It's not going to be, with useless cardiac procedures. Listen, there's a time and a place for medical emergencies. God bless the men and the women who work in the hospitals for emergency situations. But for prevention, the medical system has none. You mentioned actually that your primary care doctor is the doctor of chiropractic. I love it. I think that everybody should go see the chiropractor as their mainstream, their primary care doctor, that doctor of cause. And if there's a time and a place to go see a cardiologist, yeah. Is there a time and a place to go see, again, medical doctors in emergencies? Yes. But we always want to, do that holistic, natural focus. That's going to be the solution. COVID proved that the system is a failure. There's a much better way, and the world is waking up to it. So again, I appreciate you having me on. Anybody who wants a copy of my book, they can get it at freeheartbook.com, my website, Natural Heart Doctor. you can go there. And Eric, it's just so fantastic to talk with you again and collaborate with you, and together, ourselves and so many others that are like us. And I know we're not alone. There are literally hundreds of thousands of healthcare practitioners that are thinking the right way, and we're going to win, and society is going to win. People are going to win. Humankind is going to win, and that's very exciting.
Well, I agree with you, and it's because of people like you, warriors like you, and we will not stop. We will not stop. We will keep on going because it's inside of us, and we care about the world. We care about humanity, and so grateful to have you as a friend, as a comrade, and we'll see you on the road, or we'll see you on a call. And thanks for looking after our people. Reach out to Dr. Jack, naturalheartdoctor.com, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, everybody. Well, listen, your 100 is coming. You make the call. Dr. Eric with Dr. Jack signing out.